All right, guys, today our conversation is going to take us into a world of healing through darkness and many other places that we could travel in the next 50 minutes. We'll see where we go. But, as this is a community of men who are dedicated to thriving at home and at work, I believe that today's show is going to give some resources that will help support you in perhaps all the pillars of Front Row Dads, but specifically in the one of emotional intelligence, which to me is going to help you translate this to providing psychological safety for your family, perhaps in your business, for yourself, most certainly. And then of course, anybody that's in your surroundings. My guest today is Robbie Bent, a new dad to a 7-month-old boy. He's been married for 2 years. And I also want to thank Rob McKenzie, one of our Front Row Dad brothers, for connecting us. A little bit about Robbie's story. So in his 20s, he was the founder of a startup that raised 25 million, had more than 100 employees. And ultimately he was chasing success and getting it. And I'm repeating words that I've heard Robbie say. The business ultimately crashed and he hit an all-time low. And while working his way through some challenges, including some pretty serious addictions, he stumbled upon a few things. That's really the root of our show today that we're going to get into, kind of the baseline of the story. But I also want to mention that, Robbie's created some incredible success in his life, which I think is an important part of the healing journey, which I think is true for many people in this community. So as an example, before his venture into the world of, emotional wellness and psychedelic medicine, Robbie helped build Ethereum as an early employee. Like I'm talking $6 a coin type of early, which now is in thousands, perhaps. I don't know where it is today. But where we land in this moment is he is the founder of Othership, which is a unique breathwork mobile app combined with some in-person experiences. And as I'm talking to Robbie right now, I'm looking at a picture, a background image of his newest in-person center located in New York, which I'm going to get into because and this is gorgeous looking. If you can't see this, it's like 16 in-ground ice baths, and man, we got a lot to talk about. So Robbie, welcome to the show, brother. Thanks for making time.
Thanks, John. Pumped to be here, man.
I didn't want to start here earlier in my mind, but I got to start here, which is, where is this center, man? We just got back from New York City last night. Where is this going to open up?
Yeah, so we've just submitted for permits, lease assigned 23rd West 20th. First time I've actually even announced the address publicly here, right now.
Hey,
so it's in between 5th and 6th in the Chelsea Flatiron neighborhood, 7,000 square foot flagship space. All our co-founders are moving to New York later this year as we start construction, and super pumped. It'll be probably the biggest sauna in North America to my knowledge right now. So it should fit 90 people. As you mentioned, ice bath capacity for 16 at a time, everything custom built. And the idea is a new haven to create emotional wellness experiences, which I can get into. Like, what does that even mean? What is a sauna ice bath class?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so happy for you. And I think the timing is perfect. I mean, I was literally walking through Chelsea yesterday, and we had both of our boys who are 8 and 13 now, and we had an incredible 3 days in New York. We went to the new, I guess they call it the little island, but it's this floating island. Looks like wine glasses. Have you seen this? Of course you have. No, you haven't?
No,
dude.
No,
it's probably a 15-minute walk from your new place. You got to look it up. The little island, it's crazy looking. But anyway, there's a market right there, and we just had the best day. And I think this is really fitting to say, especially with what you're doing, is that it felt very healing. It felt very healing. And the other part of it that I think, outside of like the healing aspect, was the possibility that when you say flagship, we were in the Starbucks Reserve store. Have you seen that?
No,
dude, that's also really close. It's crazy. They've got these like coffee beans that go through the ceiling on these tubes and into, I mean, when I say somebody sunk millions of dollars into their store, it's crazy. But I think what I love about those flagship ideas is it speaks to possibility, and I love that when you can expand your visual landscape, helps you expand perhaps your inner landscape. So on that note, let's come back to and bookmark the baths and all of this. I really want to start with this darkness retreat. for you. And I think this will be a peek into your courage and your world, but can you just tell us, why did you journey into darkness and what that experience was like for you? And then we'll kind of get to where you are now.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in sort of once a year, these resets. Stumbled on that idea through, as you mentioned, dealing with addiction. I was just looking for support. Got into Vipassana meditation retreats, psychedelic medicine retreats. And through those, realized that it's not necessarily the format that is important, like the specific, but what is important is having time to be off your phone, to have a complete reset, no caffeine, just kind of like removing yourself from day-to-day life periodically. I'm not like the best with it, just, I'm a dad and busy, as probably most of your listeners are, but once a year I try to do something in this vein. So it might be a meditation retreat, it might be a psychedelics retreat, I'm doing a Hoffman process at the end of this month for the first time. So it's like 1 week, 7 to 10 days, no phone, some type of challenge that is like difficult, that allows you to get past, hey, I wake up, have coffee and start working. So something that will change your frame of view to allow you to sort of float up and notice your behavioral patterns. And I found doing this once a year has led to like significant change over time. So the darkness was, you always hear about this stuff on the fringes. And then sooner or later, Aaron Rodgers is doing this and it's in the Wall Street Journal. But 4 years ago, when I'd heard about it, it was like kooks in my community. Like, oh my God, there's this crazy dark meditation where you go do it in a cave in Guatemala. And I was kind of like, oh, and you have this DMT high. And I was like, what are these people talking about? Like very kind of like, okay, this sounds out there. And heard about it a few more times. Thought, okay, maybe I should call these guys up and see what the deal is. And so I went to a place in Oregon called Sky Cave, one of the only ones to offer it in the US. Had a chat with the founder, Scott, and was just blown away by his level of presence. So he'd spent, I think, 2 years in isolation in nature. He'd done, dozens of meditation retreats. And just in talking to him, initially I was put off by it because a lot of people say, hey, this is some crazy psychedelic experience. And I'm always, when I hear that, kind of like, okay. And so he started explaining to me it's actually an incredibly deep meditation experience. And it was about learning to relax and learning to overcome fear and learning to be completely present with nothing around. And in talking to him, hearing, I'm like, wow, that is so opposite to what my life is now. And so I thought, this will be part of me. It was ego-based. So like, can I do this? It's like, oh, I'm going to do 10 days. Like, okay, what are other people doing? 5, I'm going to double that. Like, yeah, I'm the strongest, I'm the best, like these kind of feelings. So there was some ego involved in like, can I do it? And when I failed a lot in life, I hit this rock bottom point we kind of alluded to early, like, $60 in my bank account, addicted to drugs, all these different issues. And I thought like, okay, if I can just do these hard things, I'm going to be able to be strong and improve my life. So I started trying to, face my fears. And so this was another one in that vein where it was partly an ability to like really see what I could do to take myself out of normal life. At the time I went, I was drinking so much coffee and working so hard that I actually missed the flight because I was just like checking Twitter. And this was during COVID when, gyms are closed, panic scrolling all the time of what's going to happen, getting involved in social media, which I never use, not seeing friends, eating Uber Eats every day, like just living kind of a shitty, like sucked into these habits that weren't the norm for me. And so I got to the airport and actually missed the connecting flight because I was just like doom scrolling on Twitter. So it was like driving, a sports car 300 miles right into a fucking brick wall, the change of like that lifestyle going into no coffee, dark room. And it's like so dark, you can't even see your hand in front of your face, and it never adjusts. Like it's just that level of darkness.
And totally quiet too.
Completely quiet. You can hear like some animals outside, so you can tell if it's morning because there's birds chirping and stuff like that. But it's like a legit cave, complete darkness. The only time there's ever any interaction is once a day, somebody will bring food in the evening and they have a little contraption. They put the food through on one end, close it up. So it's still dark when you grab the food. And so it's like complete and utter darkness. And so it's a really big challenge from just, you're immediately changed. Like you wake up the first morning and fear, like, you realize your eyesight is what creates safety. So you kind of look around and don't know where your body stops and where the atmosphere starts. Is something going to jump out and get you? It's extremely uncomfortable. And so just sitting with that over time and learning to breathe through that fight or flight state was extremely powerful, to the point where, day 5, day 6, I could start to relax into the darkness. Now, to be transparent, I was afraid of the dark when I was a kid. I'd be in the basement, shut off the light. I would run upstairs. I was pretty afraid of horror movies. I would have these like kind of panic attacks at night, not wanting, thinking something was going to grab my legs under my bed. And so darkness was a deep-seated fear for me for many years growing up. And so it was a really confrontational to just sit with that all day and let go. And at the same time, a really arduous experience. So I'd done meditation retreats where you meditate 10 hours a day. And so at least in those, you have lunch and you go and you walk around and, it's silent. But
did that feel easy compared to this?
I wouldn't say, no, like they're all hard, but this was just its own thing where it was, I would meditate for a few hours a day and still be like, okay, about day 5, you can't really sleep anymore. And so you're just awake, and was grueling. I wanted to prove I could do it. A lot of, I wanted to leave after 2 or 3 days. I started coughing really violently and was like, oh man, I'm going to leave. But then had these, thoughts of, you told your friends and your coworkers, it was in your email signature. Like, are you going to be that soft? Like, you're done in day 3. What are people going to think? All these like, egoic thoughts that I don't want to be admitting that I was having. But of course, I was like, no, I can't just quit. I'm not going to quit. And so just muscled through it. And there would be a mixture of like, I hate this so much, it's so boring, with moments of extreme insight, things like, hey, okay, I'm not thinking about crypto prices and work and my to-do list. I'm just sitting here and, I'm turning 40 soon, and I'm probably halfway through my life. Have I lived a good life? My parents, there was a lot about death and loss and grief and surrender, because the darkness has that sort of flavor to it of just infinite. And so sitting there and saying, hey, my parents, how many more times am I going to see them? Is it 20? Is it 50? They're close to gone. And there isn't that kind of space in life to reflect. I maybe, and this is why these 1 week, 10-day things are so important, is because you can go your entire life from 20 to 60 of wake up with my son, coffee, to-do list, laptop open, all day, tired, watch TV, bed. You could do that every single day for 20 years, and maybe here and there have a thought of, am I living a good life? Do I enjoy nature? What do I want? What these kind of like different styles of thought. And so you're in there and those things come up, and it's why it's so important, because, life isn't about the busyness, and it's so easy to get lost in the busyness. So having some space to just, what is it that's important? And one amazing moment, like probably one of the best moments of my life, was coming out, and the simplicity of just, wow, I can see. Everything was buzzing. It was kind of dank inside, and so I couldn't feel like I could breathe properly. And so to come out and breathe like fresh mountain air, to fall to my knees and just smell the ground, to like slowly watch the sunrise and see things turn first green and brown, and see those for the first time. And then as the sky turned blue, when the sun like peeked over right into my eyes, just like to see color, like, wow, and just taking a walk and smelling the grass, there was a creek that I just went into as a natural cold plunge. And then I ate breakfast, and to be able to see what I was eating, it was like the most joyous moment or morning I'd had in, maybe 10 years. And it was so fucking simple. It was just like some breathing in and out, the ability to see, and eating some food, not even any other people there. And so to feel that in your body, it's just an exercise in gratitude. And, compare that, you could be a billionaire with access to every single thing at every single moment, private jet, whatever success, anything you wanted there at your beck and call, and your happiness level, and your level of meaning, I think, would be less than just being completely present for that moment, like be able to see. And so that's a really powerful idea for me, that at any moment when you're struggling and things aren't going well, like just the ability to find gratitude in the simple act of being, it's powerful.
Did you find first sight without having removed it for so long?
Yeah, it was fucking amazing. Like, I mean, like I was kind of like the last 2 days was like, oh, I want to make it. I want to, just keep going, keep going. Like you can do it. It's kind of like if you're running a marathon and you're in like the last sprint and like everything's dying and you're just like, you're going to give up, but it's like, okay, not quite yet, not quite yet. And then finally, when I was like, okay, the morning of the 8th day, I'm like, I'm fucking out of here. And I just scrambled, like, I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here. I'm like crawling on the floor, looking for the door. You don't know where anything is, feeling the handle, like pulling on it as hard as possible. Boom, door opens. And I can just see there was kind of like an antechamber and it's still dark, but I can just see it was like all the molecules were like buzzing. Like for about 1 minute, it felt like I could see into the atoms and molecules of the world. I'm sure it's some just type of physical effect, but it just felt like every atom was alive and I could see the world alive. It was just like, holy fuck. And I can remember the first breath I took in of that. It felt like I was drinking water. The breath was so fresh and so like, and then just going outside and the smells of like, if you're in this cave, it's 10 days, like 8 days, no fresh air, no smells, no anything. And so it was just so intense, the level of gratitude and excitement. It was, mind blowing and not psychedelic in the way a psychedelic trip is, where you take the plant medicine and it's crazy. It's not like that. It's just, wow, I'm so grateful for the simple act of just like seeing this thing.
Do you think that humans have to lose something though? Do they have to be removed from it? Does abstinence need to be there in order for us to experience that level of appreciation and joy for anything, not just in your experience in life, but do we need to leave our family to go to work so that when we come back home, we feel great to see them? Do we need to have the space in between meals to appreciate eating food? I believe the answer to that is yes, to some degree. And maybe part of mastery of life is learning to appreciate it without so much space in between, where you're kind of forced to appreciate it. But could you get yourself to the place now, looking back on that experience, where you walk outside? Can you go out in the morning and experience the same level of appreciation and awe and beauty for light and all of what you saw in that moment? Or do you think that's only possible because you were in the dark for 8 days?
I mean, I think different for everybody. From personal experience, for me specifically, every religion has the idea around restriction in some format.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long fasts, abstinence. And I think chemically our brains are producing dopamine. We're motivation seeking and pleasure seeking. And so restriction helps to then boost that dopamine later. So like what's happening in my brain when I come out after 8 days of darkness is probably chemically different than what happens if, hey, I'm just in life. So I think there's probably a chemical difference in how we feel, same as we're fasting and then have that first meal. There's like, oh man, I've did it. I've accomplished this hard thing. Boom, the brain is lighting up the same way it does in the cold plunge. So I think there's things that are happening chemically that probably aren't possible without restriction. And then, like every time I do these type of things, like I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy and a lot of Ryan Holiday's writings. And what I've just found is, after you put yourself through something difficult, and so one of our core values at Othership is just this idea of cellular commitment. And it's, hey, the path can be fun. We can do it in community, but requires some discipline. I find I feel significantly better, and I fail. Right now my diet is terrible. I'm crushing fast food. I'm struggling to be healthy with the child, which we could talk about. But when I do hit a goal like that, something special happens in my brain that feels amazing. And same as you mentioned, if I go away from my family for a couple of days, I fucking miss them so much. And when I come back, it's special. And so I think, one, these hard things are like a staple in my life personally that I feel I get gains from at this moment. And then two, I think you can also consciously focus on gratitude. So I used to read a ton of books, a lot of podcasts. I'm a guy, I'm walking on my walk and I'm listening to a podcast on 2X. Like I got to maximize the gains. I got to get productive. I need to know the tools. And I used to be like that in my early, 20s to 30s, that kind of young hero energy. And now my energy is like, man, I've read all these books. I don't remember any of them. I've done the 4-hour morning routine. I've got fucking 5 minutes now and I don't do it. And okay, fine. That's fine. So now I found I just read a poem in the morning. I love young Pueblo's an author, and I just read this one poem in the morning. I take a deep breath in and I feel into it, and it helps me connect to be grateful. So one feeling of love that I like send to my wife or my son, boom. I don't have to remember the poem. I just kind of check in. And so I feel like even without the restriction, you can consciously find moments of gratitude, whether it's a poem or a note you send. Some people do one good deed every day. Whatever it is, you can program that in and get some of those feelings also.
All right, let me close out the dark retreat piece here with a question of like, is there a headline, a statement, a mantra, a phrase, like in the fewest words possible? Did you have something that you're like, that retreat was about this, or this was the thing I took away?
1 second. Sorry about that. Somebody's at my house. Just trying to keep the noise down. Yeah, so I think for the dark retreat, if I had to say like one result, was just this idea of surrender, which I find super challenging. I'm like, coffee, control, to-do list. I control my own life. I'm going to make it happen. So much tension and holding on and trying to guide and that like power energy. And the dark retreat was just like, fuck, okay, there's fear. And it was just taking a deep breath and like letting go. And so that's helped me now. I'm pretty afraid of what we're doing in New York. Like I signed the lease and guaranteed it. What if it fails? We're opening 3 at once. It's a big swing to build this thing I'm in love with. And what if it doesn't work? And so there's fear every day in my business of just, hey, and so the dark retreat practice was just, surrender, let go. And I'm like 1 out of 10 in skill at this, but it's just something that I would love to be better at.
Okay. So let me see if I can build a bridge here between a couple of things. I want to talk about surrender. I want to talk about you signing these leases, because I got a lot of questions around that. And then I want to keep weaving in like how you're doing this as a dad and a husband. Like, so feel free to just talk to me about the challenges and the victories of doing all this and being a family man, because that's really why this podcast exists. But real quick, you said you were reading poetry. I can't let that go for a second. Who was it that you mentioned?
Young Pueblo. It's Yung Pueblo. And he just writes these 2 books. He's got one called Inward and another one called Clarity and Connection. Each one's like 250 pages, 250 or so, like kind of poem scripture. They're just like a paragraph each. And you could just read these one a day for the rest of your life. And the wisdom in them is phenomenal. Like so good. Like you can have a state change from reading one of the sentences and just be like, whoa.
How'd you find him?
You step back. I was at a retreat. I did an ayahuasca retreat for fatherhood with like 15 of my closest friends as a ritual to, call in transformation from selfish non-dad to still selfish, but dad. And my sister was there and had the books, and she gave
Robbie,
me one.
you got to stop giving me all these threads that I want to pull on, man. We're gonna have to do part 2, part 3. Stop it. All right, this is good stuff, man. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and she was there and had the book and just was like, hey, you should take a look at this. And I read one. It was just like, whoa, that hit me. And then every day at that retreat, I would read one more, and I kind of looped it into my meditation practice. And so even if I could only get in 2 minutes of meditation or 5 minutes because I'm busy, I would loop in like one poem, meditation, one poem. So just 2 pages I would try to read per day. And so I picked up that habit, and it's one that I, even if I don't do it for 5 or 6 days, when I'm busy, I'll come back to it. And even if it's a couple days a month, that for me is now my morning routine. It's just a couple breaths and reading this poetry.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about these physical locations that you're opening. I'm fascinated by the breath work, and I'm fascinated by the app, but I feel like we've explored that space pretty well. I think people should go check it out. So let me just leave it at that. Like, go get the app, check it out. I think that's a space that people will step into quickly. And I think it's awesome. By the way, who was I listening to? There was a show where they played one of your guided breathwork sessions at the end of the interview, and I thought that was genius. So maybe
we can add it in here. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that was so cool that I didn't have to go find it, that it just played, and it was beautiful. Let's talk about this surrender piece. I was mentioning to you earlier somebody that I knew that signed a big lease in New York, and dude, I can't help but ask this, and I'm not trying to, like, it's one of those things I don't want to bring it up because you're like, don't jinx this thing, or don't even say that. But knowing that things shut down a couple years ago, knowing that you're opening a physical location in New York, and talk about surrendering, dude, take me into your world of how you decided to take this risk. How are you navigating your fears now? Because I think it's beautiful. I wanted to ask you, how are you taking your surrender practice and you're managing fear, and how is it working in your daily life? So this is the perfect place to practice this conversation, I think.
Yeah. So brick and mortar is interesting because if you want to grow, like, you have to take risk. It's not a software company where we raise someone else's money and like, so what? At the end of the day, the founders at the start have to sign the leases, and you have to guarantee them. And so, we started out, it was an ice bath in a backyard, and then an underground like social club in my garage on a residential street, and that grew to 1,000 people. And we just saw how impactful it was for the neighborhood, like 1,000 people showing up. And this is 4 years ago, before Wim Hof, or this stuff's not that popular yet, and people are coming and they're becoming friends, and they're doing anger releases, and they're dating. And so, we signed a lease. We thought like, hey, in COVID, signed a lease, and just thought there was demand for it because people were coming to our space. And I remember some parents and like older generation were like, people will never group sauna again. There's no way this is going to work.
Right.
And so for the first one, my partners and I, we could self-fund it. So we're kind of like, whatever, like if it fails, it would suck, but like, it's not going to be like financial ruin. And so it was just really important to us as something to build, as a new place to hang out without alcohol that like creates connection. Like, we have a space for men every second Monday night, and it's for dads and men, and 40 people in the ice baths at once, playing a giant drum, just just like you're playing sports. And then the sauna opens up to share about like, hey, I'm struggling. Even myself, I'll go in and say I'm struggling as a dad, and like the space is held by 40 other men. And so seeing that kind of stuff, it's just like, wow, this is fucking important. Like, it is changing people's lives. And so we launched this one in Toronto, and it's got 500 5-star reviews, and it's busy like 2 weeks in advance. Like, it's crushing it, So
what is the name of that?
It's called Othership.
Okay, same name. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and there's like crazy social videos, and it's got a huge following. And
dude, right, your videos are crazy. Like, when I was just learning about you, I'd seen all these people on the beach. Like, your videos are great.
Yeah, that was actually a world record, 2,000 person ice bath, and we're going to reboot it this November with a 4,000 person for anyone who wants to come up. But there's a huge groundswell. People want to do social stuff that's healthy, and so we signed a lease right after. I remember my partners are like, you're fucking nuts. Like, everything is breaking. Like, the cold plunges are pools, and people don't realize you can't just like buy a plunge off the shelf and put it in a room and like have it. You can't. Like, they're all pools. There's like health requirements. You need to get engineering stamps. Like, it's intense to build these. And so our cold plunges aren't working. We're having trouble getting the permits. It's like, you may not be able to open. While this was happening, I signed a lease for the second one in Toronto, and they're like, you're fucking nuts. But I was like, no, like, I know it's going to work. We can fund it ourselves. And so we did that. And so that one's under construction. It should open in like 2 or 3 months. then we had such a good response that people came to me and were just like, hey, I think nothing like this exists in the US. You've created something brand new. There is no such thing as an emotional wellness class that happens in a sauna. And it's a mixture of like a Cirque du Soleil performance, you know, kind of a meditation, yoga, therapy class, all in one, sort of like church elements where there's group singing and sharing, like, you know, we'll black out the sauna, play a gong, and you'll bring up a moment of anger and everyone will scream and like process that emotion in their body. And so it's people who've come, you know, 50% of the class is crying. And so I had people just, there was such a groundswell, like, hey, you need to open this in the US. You need to open it fast. We'll give you money. And I was kind of, first it was a lifestyle business. And then I had to make the decision that, hey, we want to go bigger. And to go bigger, you know, the biggest thing you can possibly do, we kind of looked around at Austin and a few other cities, and it just became clear the biggest thing you can do with a new brand like this is Chelsea, Flatiron District in New York. It is like you mentioned when we started talking, like the crazy flagship Starbucks, like it is all the best fitness, wellness, all that stuff, all the newest, most innovative stuff happens in those blocks, and, you know, most expensive to build, hardest department of health, like it's intense. But we said, you know, we've created this thing over 4 years with like 70 hours a week of work. We created all the programming from scratch, all the music, the entire like idea that this was even possible. And we want to build that, you know, and put it out and like take the risk and like take the swing. And I've been trying to be an entrepreneur for 15 years. I've had a bunch of failures, few successes. But this was the one, like, you know, I made this because I was a drug addict and this was what helped me. And my partners, like, every day for fun, we would create breathworks on the weekend. We would create like an anger management class or, you know, this men's class I mentioned. And so it just felt right to be the first movers and like make this a huge thing. So I just was fucking pumped, man. We're just believing it so much. Like we're actually all moving to New York, and yeah, it's scary as fuck. Even what's scarier is we're trying to sign a lease for a second one, and we'll probably run out of money and probably be $4 or $5 million short. So now I'm trying to decide if we want to do that and like get debt financing, you know, to move fast, or if we want to wait. And so I don't know, you know, what to do. And so I'm thinking about that now is like, hey, you could crater the company, but at the same time, like it's probably going to work. So I have utmost confidence in the product. Like I was nervous on the weekend, and I have these battles where I hear about a potential competitor and it's like a fucking punch to the stomach. And it's just like, oh my God. And you forget, like, no, man, you've spent 4 years. Like you can't just open these. They're so hard to build. How many learnings did we have? Like, how long is it going to take? Like we've been looking in New York for a year. It took us a year just to find a space with enough power. And so you forget that though. I get fucking scared and I'm like, oh my God, it's not going to work. And then I go into the space, and we did a sound immersion class on Sunday where it's like a legit musician playing amazing music while everyone sings along in the dark. And then like ohms and ahs and different vocal toning. And I was just like, fuck, this is the best experience I've done in like 5 years. Of course it's going to work. So that's kind of how I navigate, is just, you know, competition, fear. And then I try to remember why I'm doing this. And like seeing the smiles on people's faces, reaching out to the customers. We've got, I think, 30,000 customers now. And so I'll just reach out to people. You know,
Are you talking about through the app? 30,000 through the app?
No, through the space. The app has even more. Yeah. So it's been so successful. And like we closed for a week for renovation, and we sent an email out by mistake, like your membership has been frozen. And no joke, 200 emails back yesterday of like, no, like my membership's not frozen, please. And I was just like, fuck yeah, like this is amazing. You know, it's really making a difference. So it's a management of like self-doubt, worried about scarcity. I've been through, you know, bankruptcy before, and like I have a son now. And so these feelings of like, what is the worst that could happen? It's going to happen. With why am I doing this? Why am I excited? But it's a fucking battle, man.
Dude, you know what I'm experiencing right now? You know what emotions I'm experiencing? Earlier, you're like, hey, I got a hard stop at this time. I'm like, I think we'll be good. And now I'm going, fuck, I should have asked for more time. I got so many questions, but let me say this, dude. Let me say this. From the bottom of my heart, I am deeply appreciative that you are taking this risk, that you're stepping into this space. I, at 47 years old, with a 13-year-old and 8-year-old right now, feel that at this stage in my life, I've said this countless times in the last number of months, maybe even over the last year, that this feels like healing to me. Everything that I'm focused on in our community, 300 men from 15 different countries, it's like, how do I serve them? I actually think healing is one of the most powerful ways. And what you're doing, I can't wait for our members and anybody listening to this podcast to get involved, to be there. I've been hosting live events for 25 years now. And I can honestly say that I don't think anything outside of the psychedelic medicine space, right, that world, very little has created more transformation than breathwork for men in our events and through other events that I've been a part of. To see the reaction from even 15 minutes of breathwork. I have a friend, Stefanos, who you might know, who lives here in Austin, who led our breathwork session. And 15 minutes, men were having these experiences that I'm like, I don't know that we could create that in 6 hours without this tool, without these resources. And there's so many people that are just putting their toe in the water, no pun intended, to be able to do these types of things. Even in my own backyard, with a sauna and a plunge in my backyard, the depth of my conversations and the places, like how different my world is than it was in my 20s when it was, let's grab a beer, and now it's, let's sit in the sauna. It's cool that we're also entering the space where people are joking about people with their ice baths. They're like, you don't have to tell the world that you did an ice bath. Like every show is like, we did the sauna and this. I love that. I love that it's actually gaining enough momentum that it's becoming kind of a joke that people can poke fun at it. So thank you, brother. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Talk to me, if you can, in the time that we have. I'm going to be very careful with my questions. I want to talk about your passion for your work, how much you're pouring in, and what you're doing well at home as a married man and as a dad, like where you're proud of yourself for showing up despite the efforts that you have that need to be done at work. And also where you might have some fear around, like where you might be dropping the ball in those spaces too. Talk to me about the real life of being a guy passionately building business who's trying to be a family man too.
Yes, I think if you think of all the aspects in your life, like the first one, we'll talk about friends. That's toast. That doesn't even exist for me. It's not even a possibility. Next is like kind of health. Okay. So for me, health a little bit more important than like consistently hanging with friends. That's kind of been dusted. I'm trying to get to the gym occasionally, box a little bit, but like work will come up and, so kind of tanking that. Definitely diet has gone brutal. Like I actually just hired a health coach for myself and my wife for some accountability to try to feel better. I wake up, I feel like shit. Then you have, relationship, which is next most important. So the relationship with your wife, and I can talk about that. And I feel, I've definitely been failing at that. So in some ways, it's great because we're co-founders, so we have the business, but some things that I wasn't expecting as a dad was, and it feels, we have help. My wife's amazing. She does most of the work. I do like 10% of the work. And so I just like, I'm not even showing up and like crushing it. And I'm still like finding it hard. And I feel bad even complaining because there's single moms out there with like 3 kids, So it's like, who am I complaining to? I should just shut up and not say anything and just take it. And like, there's a lot of resistance and guilt there. And I think one thing that's happened is, it's 7 p.m, baby goes down. I'm fucking exhausted. And so our intimacy used to be every single night. Like I love my wife so much, and she is the reason why we're successful and I've been sober. Like she was like the main pillar in my life. And it used to be, I'm needy. Like I'm emotionally like, I don't know if I can do it. I need your help. And like in the new, she has someone else who now needs her care all the time. Like she doesn't need that from me. And so I feel bad even dumping and venting to the same degree. Because like she's not there for me in the same way. And so I'm like looking at that, how I can be better. But like intimacy, after, you're tired, and it's like, hey, where's the time? Like I used to be every night at dinner, movie, TV, go to bed together, and like finding time for sex and just to make her feel like I love her as much as I do. Kind of been tanking that. Then it comes down to like work. which is like very, very important to me, like being successful. There's parts of me that are like, have enough money. Don't be in like a fucking situation where you go bankrupt. And also like be successful. That was drove me my whole life to like feel like a good person, was that I could like be successful and my parents were proud of me. So that's like so strong. And then within that, it's okay, like it's happening. Like you are successful. This is crushing it. Like you're doing so well. Everything's set up, like go. So it's so exciting. But then all these other parts, before I could just work all the time and then at night spend time with my wife and I could balance. And I was overwhelmed. Probably the health and friends still weren't doing great, but I could at least like work and my wife crushing it. Then the baby comes. Now it's like, hey, I kind of want to be a bit healthier. So like I'm strong when my son's older. I kind of want to spend a bit more time with my son. Like, don't know that I want to work so much, then like, oh, I want to be a good dad and like a better husband. So all these parts of me, I do a lot of parts work. And so, one thing I did really well was get support. So I have a business coach and emotional coach, and I've started since the baby. And that's been really helpful to have like external outlets to talk to, like really talk to for like 90 minutes at a time, a couple times a month on both business and problems. So I don't have to vent to my wife as much. And then I was talking the other day and I was just sharing these feelings. Like I feel fucking guilty. Like all these other parts, they want like the work part has been so strong because when I was broke, it took over and was like, I'm going to fucking crush it. I'm going to listen to every podcast, read every book. I'm going to interview thousands of people. I'm going to work my fucking ass off and work every day. I'm going to build these products. I'm going to fucking crush life. And it did. And it like made money and got successful and built this thing and became a leader and became sober. But like, there's other parts that are like, yo, I want to have a good life. I want to fucking be healthy. I want to be a dad. And they're starting to rebel. They're starting to say like, okay, 70-hour weeks and just coffee and, smoking a cigarette at the end of the day because you're stressed. Like, I don't, where do you sit here? So there's been a lot of challenge in like making my wife feel loved. So I talked to her the other day and just like, hey, let's put it down. Like, what do you want from me? And so the wants were like 4 mornings a week. And on the weekend, you take the baby. So I get up, she sleeps in, she does the nights, and I take the baby in the morning. And like, that makes her feel good and supported. And I've started to love that. So I got my own routine with him in the morning, and that's my morning. And then also it was, between 5:45 and 6:45 off the computer and off the phone. And we have dinner together, the baby and her, and I'm kind of there. And then 1 date per week. And so the nights in the week, the date, we're kind of getting the hang of the babysitter and stuff. But I think it was just sitting there, like this unsaid guilt of like, fuck, I'm not being a good dad. I'm not being supportive enough. Cause I just going to be honest, I fucking hate doing chores. My mom forced me to do it when I was young, and I just don't like cleaning up. And like, it's like something that it just grates on me, And so I have a nanny but like, then I feel like, oh, I'm not doing my part. So I wanted to get rid of that guilt. So I talked to her about it and we set those boundaries, and they seem pretty good. Now, I think where I'm struggling is just the emotional stuff. She's just like, you're a fucking psycho. And so on the weekend, I found out there was some competitor who was like using all our pictures in their deck and just copying us. And like, I started getting pissed. And I was like thinking about it all, even though it doesn't matter. I was just thinking about it all weekend. And she's like, are you even here? Like, you're not even normal. Like, and she used to be able to deal with those stresses, but I don't want to put it on her. So dealing with the stress and the fear related to work, I have some outlets, which I'm trying, but I'm not doing great of like separating them to find intimacy. So one thing we're going to try, we actually just released an intimacy program on our app, and it's 20 sessions for self and partner intimacy, and they're guided foreplay and like guided breathwork together as a couple with eye gazing, guided tantric practices, some guided desire building. And so it's something that's been really hard with the baby. Sleeps in our room, he sleeps in our bed, which we kind of love anyways, but it's like, and it's just, yeah, it's been hard to find time for that with so much work. Like I feel being a dad could be a full-time job just on its own, and like to combine it with work is a struggle. So that's kind of everything that's going on. I would say I don't feel mastery at all in this realm, but I feel like I'm contributing. And it's like for a long time, I just felt selfish also. Like I didn't really enjoy the first few months. And so I don't know if people say that publicly, but I didn't feel the connection. I felt like, yeah, he's really cute and I'm happy to be a dad, but it's only been recently where I've started to feel like, whoa, like I want to fucking go home and like hang out with him. And like he goes to bed and then I'm all sad that he's in bed. I'm like, oh, I should wake him up, and So it's been a really interesting journey, because at first I was like, oh, I'm an emotional guy, I'm doing all this work, and then the connection just wasn't as strong as I had thought. And then I had some guilt about that as well. So huge roller coaster, lots of guilt, wondering about how I should be showing up, and, but feeling I'm starting to find my flow a bit by asking for help.
Mm. That was awesome, man. Thank you. Thanks for being real. It's incredible to listen to somebody like you just did summarize a lot in a little bit of time. And I think that that's a great example, great modeling for men of how to be vulnerable. Because I guess it's easy when you value solutions and progress that to only put your attention in that and speak to that, but you really opened up about the things that are challenging. And I think that the anchor point at the end is being in a place where you can ask for help. That's the whole reason that this existed. I mean, the reason this started, because I was crushing it at work and I was a businessman who happened to have a family. That's why our tagline is family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. But that didn't start because I fucking figured it out. It started because I was failing miserably. And I was like, I need some help here. I'm just not talking about it enough. The point is I talk about work all the time and I'm not talking about this. So if I care about it, I've got to create some accountability for myself. And it sounds like you're moving in that direction. And I really honor you for that. So Robbie, thanks, man. I want to close here. I'm not going to do let me squeeze in one more question. I'm going to give us a little breathing room before your next gathering, but I want to say thank you. Please point men right now to where you want them to go to learn more, to connect. Imagine download the app, but you tell them where to go.
Yeah, I think if you're struggling or any of this stuff resonated, the whole idea of the app was like a super accessible way to change your emotional state. And so I mentioned like reading poetry. The other option is, we've got 1,000 sessions under 5 minutes and 10 minutes. So it's just, hey, at night, I want to find intimacy with my wife, or, in the morning, I want to change my state and like turn on and like boost my energy because I didn't sleep well, or it's after work and I've been working for fucking 14 hours and been looking at Zooms. I'm not even a human. I want to move into parasympathetic, be with my family mode. It's all there, super easy to use, just amazing music and breath, and something that, I use kind of every day to deal with these challenges. So, you can check out the app. There's a 30 days free if you don't like it. And yeah, I think that's the kind of stuff we've been talking about the whole time is what the sessions are made for.
Love it. Robbie, thanks, man. Guys, we'll link to everything in the notes and I hope you check it out. And I said earlier that there's a possibility, we'll see if our producers can pull it off, but maybe following this final statement, you'll hear one of the breathwork sessions at the end of the show. We'll see if that actually happens. Robbie, thanks again, brother. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, John.